All right, everybody, we got Dan Rozga with Remax Concepts joining us today. I've known Dan now for about 3 years. We're both newer to the industry, I guess you would say, and he's been a real trailblazer with some of his production. So already a top 100 agent in our market within 3 years and a top 40 under 40 years old in our market. So Dan, thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate having you on, and looking forward to learning more about your business and seeing the value you can provide to other agents.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it. This is a really cool thing that you've been doing. It's been fun to tune into other guests.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about how you got started, and where your business has grown to this point.
Yeah, I was really had no intention of getting into real estate in this context. I was working actually as a high school pastor at a church in West Des Moines. And that's where my background in education was, so pretty drastic difference. My father-in-law runs Cornerstone Homes, a small custom builder in the area, been around for 20 plus years. Even if you love your job, you have points where you're like, I don't know, do I really want to do this? And I was kind of having some of those conversations. COVID was particularly hard for everyone, obviously, but for the profession I was working in as a pastor, with people, relationships, all those things being important, and a lot of those things being trimmed, made it hard, and you couldn't help but wonder, like, should I be doing this right now? So he had said, maybe you should consider real estate. He worked with who's an owner of my company now. And I honestly, as I look back at it, I don't know why I said yes or how I said yes, because I'm very overthinker, tend to be pretty conservative in decision making. I think about decisions that would maybe not be conservative, but I never actually do it. And I just fast forward and I'm like, all right, I guess I'm a realtor now. So it all happened really quickly, but I'm super happy. I love where I'm at. I love our industry. I love the collective Des Moines realtor group of people, and it's great.
Yeah. And I think you started on a team when you first got into real estate, like you said. So talk about that change from going from team to then now being independent.
Yeah. The team to me from the start was it's sort of a safety net. It's kind of how I justified, well, what if I go into this commission-based position? And it's a team, at least in this particular team, provided some leads, provided support, provided all those things, which was great. I was really thankful that I did it. It's just, I really underestimated the sphere that I would bring in from my own, deals that came in kind of flooding in way more than I thought. And, I enjoyed it. And I'm glad that I wasn't on it for a long time, because that would be a symptom of a growing business. So I don't regret what happened, but I do it was cool to be around the camaraderie. The team meetings weekly were cool. I got to meet some people who were really gracious to me and walked through, really simple questions that I would call simple now. But when you're in the beginning, it's okay, this is really I need to make sure this is right. You're writing your first offer. So I was on the team in the beginning, and thankfully, I really see our brokerage as a one huge team. There's people that I meet with all the time who are team leads to even their own people, and I feel like they treat me like I'm one of their team members if I need something. So still have the support, still have a lot to learn, but I kind of just took the leap and I did some math. And I was like, I think I can do this on my own. It's still scary, but I will say it was not nearly as scary as I thought it was going to be, which is how things tend to be. But
so leaving the team, you said something about you did the math. Was there a point in your production where it just made, at what point was your production where it made more sense to go off on your own?
It was pretty early, to be honest with you. Once you start doing 4 million volume by yourself, that's a pretty respectable, there's people in our careers, and you've obviously, in our industry, obviously you've interviewed a lot of them who are just rock stars. But I feel like I'm pretty, and they're down to earth too. I know the same people that you interviewed. I guess my point is that you can be relatively mediocre in my business, mediocre in terms of sales, which isn't really the right word. I should say average or something. It doesn't mean you're a mediocre realtor, but you can still make a pretty good living and, do a fourth of what people do in volume. So when I did the math, I guess I just thought like, okay, here's the people that I brought in from my own sphere. Here's the people that were brought in through the leads. Here are the cuts that are associated with being on a team. Here's what I would have made if I, even lost the leads that came through, and it just made sense of like, okay, I think I can do this. So just had to make the decision, and finally make the leap. And I'm glad I kind of did it early. I didn't really like mull on it very much. I just kind of did it.
Right. So, and then obviously, leaving a team, you lose all that support, you lose the leads. Talk about some of the struggles that you've had losing some of that structure in your business and how you've overcome that, or if you're still struggling with it today.
Yeah, like I kind of alluded to earlier, sometimes things are a lot scarier than they seem until you experience it. So like leads, for example, okay, I can pay for leads too. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like, well, how am I going to get these leads? It's like, well, and maybe you can't do this depending on where you're at in your business, but it's like, it's not that scary. It's like, okay, can you budget for leads? If the answer is yes, then it's like, well, okay, then that eliminates that fear. Obviously, if you're, it takes a while to build up some funds to be able to afford leads. I guess it depends on your comfort level, how much you want to spend, how good you are at converting them. There's some competitive zip codes to purchase leads. So hopefully I'm answering your question. It basically wasn't too much of a drop off because there's a variety of things that I think led to me growing as fast as I did. I think some of it is the market that I was in was a pretty great market to be working with people, with rates being as low as they were. So I'm not trying to discount myself exactly, but I also think I was placed in a market that was, if you had good relationships, you probably did pretty well. And I'm from the area, so it's not like I was transplanted somewhere. I had to work cold leads with no connections. I'm from Indianola. I'm still very active there. And so, those relationships turned into helping me quite a bit.
Yeah. And I would say for you, one thing that you've done really well is really capitalize on the people that you know. I mean, the market, Indianola is where you're at, and there are some big time agents that are there, and you're one of the fastest growing agents, I'm sure, in that area. So talk about how you've been able to capture that audience when, there's some other big names in that town that capture a ton of business.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, right? When you said that, it made me think of, I'll have to make this more PG, but my grandma Rozga used to say, everyone's crap smells just like yours does. And it was kind of her way of saying, everyone's the same. Like, we're all human. We all get nervous sometimes. We all are scared sometimes. We all, and we're in a business and people handle themselves differently. I'm not here to fault anyone, but, sometimes people seem to prop themselves sometimes in a light, and this is speculation, so take it for nothing really, but sometimes people can prop themselves in a position that like feels like it's compensating. Sometimes it feels like so I share that, not to say anything about anybody in the area that you just referenced. I just, going into a market where there are people who are killing it every single year, I tried to go at it from an approach of being like, what, we're all people here. We all like go home to our families. We all, have our things that we need to work on, whatever. And like making our industry a little bit more human helped me realize, especially if you're on, I've been on the phones with people like Carrie Bishop and people like Misty Solwich and Barb McMurray, people that are in the market that I'm in who kill it every year. And they're really kind and they're really nice, and they're they're human, and we talk about stuff that's not even real estate, and those people are having years that I want to have consistently. And so going into that market and knowing like, okay, I can do this too. I can talk to someone. I will say my background working in ministry, I'd have to talk to teenagers and be relevant and not be a white noise of communication. I'd have to lead a small group leaders who were adults who had their own families, their own schedules, and I had to for lack of a better word, convince them, that's not the right word, but convince them that we're a part of something. And be careful with my words. I've had to talk to parents and grandparents from different socioeconomic statuses. So I've kind of always been in a profession where I've had to be mindful of my words. And I share that just to say that I think that that's helped me make like a connection with people in the markets that I work in. So,
And that, I think the point there is people like to work with who they like and trust. And when you in your previous life were working with a very diverse group of people, you had to be well liked and trusted amongst many different people. So I would say that's one thing for you. It's how have you, what type of conversations are you having? And maybe I don't want to say from a scripting level, but like when you get a new lead, whether it be very cold or very warm, like take me through your process on how you're able to build trust very quickly, because in many cases, some people are interviewing 1, 2, 3, 4 realtors.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where I'm thankful that I'm to a place in my business where if it's like, oh, we ended up going with someone else, I really am to a place where it's like, oh, that's a bummer, I guess. I do know what it feels like to be like, I need this lead to work. And what you have to be really careful on is that you're not compromising any, character or integrity or anything like no one sale is worth compromising character. It's just not, doesn't matter how much the deal is, doesn't matter how, I know it's like, this is a $15,000 sale. Your value and integrity is worth a lot more than $15,000. So I share that to say, I really try to be true to myself, as cheesy as that sounds. I try to treat people like people. I feel like people like that. They don't like being treated as a product. We don't, I don't call the people I work with like customers, and I don't hear many realtors do that either, but that's a good, I don't like the way that sounds. Clients, is a bit more of like you're serving them. Customer kind of sounds transactional. And, it really depends what kind of people you're working with. If you're working with an investor who is particularly business minded and transactional, you can have that more of like a business approach. If you're working with, you know what I'm saying? So the cool part of our industry is that you can make it in a variety of different ways. I guess what I'll say is, if I'm having a conversation with an online lead, for example, there are a few checkpoints that I always talk about. I do kind of like, I don't have exactly a script. I just like know where I need to go. I go there. I've done it a bunch of times, so it's not that hard. I mean, I take calls like these every week, multiple times a week. So after you do it a while, you kind of know like, okay, I need to talk to them about, like, for example, one of the things I always ask is if they're working with a realtor. My leads are purchased in 50125, the Indianola zip code. The last thing I want is to create a reputation where I'm taking somebody else's client. I'm never going to do that. If they're like, yeah, we're actually talking to somebody, then I always say, hey, no problem. I know it's kind of confusing, like with online leads on Zillow or realtor.com. Like if I was you, I would just call your realtor, set up a showing. They're great, no problem. I'm not going to try to say like, oh, well, would you be interested in talking? I wouldn't do that. Again, it's just my, the reputation I want to build there isn't one that's like stealing. So I talk about financing. I say, have you talked to a lender or not? I know people say like, hey, I don't show any houses to people who, are not pre-approved. I generally have a first, I'll do a free one just to meet them, because I feel like if I get in front of the client, I feel like I've won, to be honest. Not in an arrogant sense, but I feel like that's where my personality comes to like fruition, where I really feel like I'm able to hear them and be heard. I'm able to hear them. And so I really am just trying to get in front of them. And once I do that, it seems to work out.
Yeah. And I think, when you can level with people and let them know, like connect with them at a personal level, I find that, you just say, hey, I know you don't do this every day. And it's probably confusing, like you said, when you go on Zillow and you're not really sure who you're talking to. I think when you can do that, it kind of breaks that like, oh, this guy really just trying to help me out and wants to make it easy. And, you do a really good job with that. So is there anybody, like you've obviously done a great deal of business in a short amount of time and you have a really good understanding of people. Do you have mentors within the industry that you like to connect with and learn from? Because I know one thing I would describe you as is very curious.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. The thing that's humbling in our industry is you can have, and this doesn't just sound totally negative, but I'm a particularly negative person, actually. As you know, Jared, we know each other pretty well. I would say that, on your best year, you have somebody who does that in 6 months. Like it's in such, that's why you just have to stay grounded to yourself, because if you compare yourself too much, it's not good. And if you think you're kind of hot stuff, you also can be humbled by somebody who just can destroy you with their sales. So there's a few people that I've naturally kind of gravitated towards who I feel like have consistent business. The numbers are there, but like their character is also there. They seem really down to earth. So Seth Walker is an agent with Remax Concepts who I look up to a lot. He's somebody that I call if I have questions on things. And I also just, we'll get a drink with him and just ask him a million questions. And he's really kind to tell me like the things he does well. He'll be kind to share things like, I struggle with this sometimes, it really like normalizes some of the things that I feel. Chris Ronaldo, another agent from our office. Chris will help anyone with anything. So, it's funny that you see people and you look up to them from their business, but you also look up to them as the people that they are, which I honestly value more than the realtor that they are. Because at the end of the day, I'm not a realtor. At the end of the day, I'm a husband to my wife. I'm like a friend to my friends. I'm a son to my parents. Realtor in terms of my title, to me and my values is not, the top one. So I kind of naturally gravitate towards those who have make no mistake about it, like a very strong business, but they're great dads, they're great, they're great husbands, they're great leaders, they're fun, so I would say, yeah, Chris Ronaldo, Seth Walker, Lance Hansen is one of the owners. Lance is like gold to our industry. Lance is one of the best people in the world, and he does a lot for realtors in Des Moines, and I'm grateful to have him. That. So, the people that, and I know that this is going long, but those conversations will be had at like 9:30 at night. I'll have to call Lance, hate doing it, but he never makes you feel bad about it. The people who are just really there to help you are the people I naturally tend to go, towards and ask questions. And I hope that I do that too, someday, like when I actually know something, I'll be able to be helpful too, because everyone got to where they're at because people helped them, whether they admitted it or not, in some variety. That's just a fact.
For sure. So, I mean, obviously when these are big producers like that, they can be intimidating, which is why I wanted to create this platform to have these top producers talk about their stories. So, if there was somebody that wanted to connect with you and learn from you, because I mean, you don't give yourself nearly enough credit, but also that's how you are able to relate with people, is like you're very level-headed and grounded. So if somebody wanted to reach out to you and learn more from you, like what's the best way to connect with you?
I'll just text my assistant. I don't know. I'm just kidding. I don't have an assistant. That was stupid. No, I'm super available. And I'm an open book, and I have times where, like, to your point, maybe it's I don't give myself enough credit. I feel like there's just something lurking over my head that's always like, hey, you're in a pretty lucky field. Not that you're necessarily a lucky person, but we're in a field where we have opportunity to really like spread our wings. We have opportunities to like make, generous amounts of money if we're good at what we do. There are times where this is something that kind of drives me crazy. So this is a rant, but whenever anybody does something that's successful, it's tempting to always calculate that result. And there are times where there are calculated results. I did this, I got this lead, I nurtured them, I went through my CRM, whatever. There are also times where things happen where it's like, yeah, like the person came to you, you were the first person they talked to, and they bought that house from you. And yeah, you get paid, you know what I mean? So I guess I have to be level-headed enough to like remind myself that there is a variety of reasons for why people are successful. And sometimes you're in the right place at the wrong time, and that's not necessarily calculated. So I don't even think that's what you asked. What I would tell someone is I would love to get together, and I'm not always particularly calculated in the way that I attribute my success, and I am, but there are times where there's some things that you can't calculate, the relationships that you're in, the family that you're born into. My parents live in Indianola, and they have good influence there. They have strong relationships. Like, I didn't do anything to make that like happen. You know what I mean? So I feel like it's important to share sometimes what's behind the curtain, because what you'll see in some other people's success is, I don't know, sometimes there are things that it's not necessarily calculated, I guess, for how they became successful.
For sure. And I think, on the flip side, like, some businesses take longer to grow than others. So what would you say to someone who's, maybe hasn't had the success in the same amount of time? I think you may have already hit on it a little bit earlier, but talk about like, yeah, if you're not having the success, like talk about the things that they could be doing, or the mindset they need to have throughout that.
Yeah. Again, like just reach out to 2 or 3 or 4 realtors that you just want to be like, and just meet with them every quarter for the rest of your career. In that amount of time, you'll have something to talk about. You know what I mean? Whether it's a stress, whether it's whatever. Sometimes like that is something specific that they tell you in that meeting that's helpful. Sometimes you just need to be encouraged a little bit, and like, you know what I mean? And not just be so down on yourself. So that being said, what's so difficult about our industry, and I'm too young to see the fruit of this yet, admittedly, is that like you do small things over and over again, and they add up, and they do start to multiply, and they do start to snowball. And what can be tough when you're young is you can know all the facts about, how the process works in real estate. You can know a bunch of stuff about your CRM. You can know a bunch of things in theory, but there are certain things that you cannot experience and know until you experience. And one of those things is like compound work over time. So what I would encourage them is to make sure that the work that you're doing is worth doing, and just keep doing it, I guess, and have thick skin. Have people look at your business and say, hey, I think you're wasting your time with this. Hey, I don't think that's a good idea. Hey, you're saying this isn't working. You've only tried it for 3 weeks. That's not a long time. You gotta, so you do have to be able to receive feedback from people. And I think the point is being able to receive it, and then making sure that you're getting that feedback from people who actually care about you and your business. And there are people in our industry who just genuinely care about your business because they're selfless people. And so inviting those people into a space and being pretty protective of who you allow to be that voice. You don't want just anyone to give you that advice, but somebody who you trust. Those have been the things that have honestly really helped me, just continuing to following up with the people that are in my pipeline, and it gets bigger and bigger. But, the system of following up is the same whether I have 10 people in my pipeline looking at houses, or I only have 2. Obviously, I want there to be 10 all the time, but that's just not how it always works. So doing that and making sure that I'm meeting with people regularly has just helped me a lot.
Absolutely. And I think that's what you said there was awesome. Just like staying consistent is one of the best things you can do, even if it doesn't seem like it's working. Knowing that it's going to work out in the long term, having a good mindset behind what you're doing is integral. And I like the one thing that I really like that you said was, meet with 3 to 4 people that you really want your business to model after, and meet with them once a quarter. I think that's a really cool concept that that's something I didn't even think about myself, but that's a good way to phrase that, especially if you're wanting to have mentors in the business. So, for you said following up with leads. So getting back to like a day-to-day thing, what does your day-to-day look like in terms of activity? Even you can throw in some personal stuff in there, like, working out if you do that, stuff like that.
Yeah. I try to get into the office right away in the morning. Right away for me is not super early, 8 to 9, but I mean, like the first thing I do after I get up, get ready. I know there are people in our business who get up way earlier than that. For me, I'm not doing that. It sounds dumb, but like, respond to your emails that you have that maybe came in. It's crazy. And I'm guilty of it too, to be honest. There are times where it's like, crap, I still haven't responded to that. It's like, you got to get on that. I've heard one of my colleagues, Steve, say that like his team says, don't go to bed without responding to a text or an email. Make sure that that's cleared. And that works for them, but it's kind of a way of being like, okay, at least before you go to bed, you can know there's nobody who has like a pending message. So there's that. Typically on Mondays, I send out like a video message to my like pending or active clients. And again, I do that because my personality is so driven by like that over just like a text. So that's good because a lot of people don't always like to take calls. They're busy or whatever. A lot of times I'll do, if it's a husband and wife, I always do a group text, and I'll send a message and say, hey, it sounds like things are going really well. The appraisal came back clean. Here's kind of what we got next. Even if they don't understand the steps that are taken, you just reaching out and doing anything shows that you're not just like the realtor who got them under contract, says see you later, and leaves at closing and see you later. It's just not a great way to, I think they say, I've heard it said, I'm going to butcher this, but like people refer realtors by how they treat them during the transaction. They use you because they know you or they like you, but they refer you for how you treat them. And so, I do that. I've told you, Jared, that I've neglected my gym time recently, but I try to get to the gym. So let's just say I get to the office at 8, respond to emails, make some calls. Maybe there's something going on during a transaction. Then around like 11-ish, I'll go to the gym. And then in the afternoon, I'll either come back to the office. Now I have a physical office, not at home. I've just found that my most productive work is done in a physical office, not at home. So it's not that I don't do stuff at home, but I don't usually do very important stuff at home because I just don't do it very well. That's just been like something for me.
No, that's good stuff. I'm very similar. If I work from home, I'm not as nearly as productive as when I'm in the office. So no, I resonate with that. And I think that's a good path to follow day to day. So,
Yeah.
I think one thing too, going off building trust with your clients, I think you're also a really good referrer. Like a lot of people, when you make a referral, you're very much like, hey, here's what I'm thinking. Here's a person I think you may be willing to have a conversation with. Like talk about how you've been able to excel with that and, find people that you work with well in the industry and, to help grow your business.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because you said this in the beginning, people want to, as a realtor, people want to work with people that they like. Well, that's exactly how I treat my vendors. I want to work with people that I like. It's this thing. You have to, or not have to, but I like to like them. They also have to be good at what they do. So I don't refer business just because I'm like, man, they're a really good guy, but they're like kind of not that great at this. Because that's a huge reflection. The thing about realtors is we're a reflection of our vendors, whether we like it or not. So we say, you should talk to this guy. They're great. They'll take care of you. And that person sucks or they're horrible at responding. It's kind of going to be back on you most of the time. They're like, why would you refer this person to me? And that is overwhelming, especially when you have people who are constantly trying to earn your business as a vendor, whether it's a lender, insurance, whatever. And, there's a risk associated there because even if they're a great person and they make a good impression, as we know, there can be people who can show face and, be like, oh man, they sound great. And they're just not good at what they do. So I really try to keep like the list smaller in terms of the people that I really personally vouch for. I wouldn't personally vouch for somebody that I've not personally used. But like, for example, you were our lender when my wife and I bought our house. So that's always a good sale, and I enjoy when people use you because I know what you do it well. I like you offer great product and service. Our businesses are similar in how we communicate, which I think is really important. If you have somebody on your vendor list and it doesn't follow the path of how you do things, whether, then it just kind of feels like everything goes haywire. So, but that's one thing I've just said, yeah, Jared was our lender. My wife and I used him because, that shows like, oh, you're not just like suggesting something, but like you personally used this person. So yeah, I feel like I have pretty good success with like referring people to certain people. And I guess, to be honest with you, the reason why it works a lot is because I think that those clients trust me. So that I have to be really careful to make sure that my trust isn't broken with vendors, because that could break trust with clients and then I start losing money. And so, not that that's the most important thing, but like those things can affect someone's business quite a bit. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think, that's important who we work with. And even from our side, insurance is generally who we refer to most and from our side. So I can definitely vouch, like you want to work with people you like and trust and, get set up your business personally from the best way you can, but also set up your client in the best way that they can to make sure that they're taken care of. So, in terms of your business, where do you want your business to go to finish the year, but also in the next 3 years? Like, where do you picture your business being?
Yeah, that's a great question. I am not, and this is why I know I told you, I'm like, I don't know why you're interviewing me for this. I'm not like, I'm not a vision board guy. I do have goals in the beginning of the year. I'm not exactly like a 10x guy, like take your goal and multiply it times 10. Nothing wrong with that. nothing wrong with that at all. The way I see it is all those things and goals affect your lifestyle. And so personal lifestyle, which is more important to me than work. So I really try to ask myself, what do I want my wife and I's life to look like in the immediate sense in the 3 to 5 years? And then I answer the question about business, because I think those order of operations kind of matter, if that's the right analogy. So I would say this year, things have gone well. Last year, things went very well. You mentioned in the beginning, top 100. Not anymore. I'm not in the top 100 anymore, and I'm not even close. So I was very fortunate to have that. But, that's the thing. Your year can fluctuate so much. So in the remaining part of the year, I would like to close, excluding what I have pending, I would like to close probably 3 to 4 more million, have roughly 1.5 million pending. That would make me feel really good about closing the year pretty consistently. And over the next 3 years, as you mentioned, it's not all about volume, but that's where my mind, I guess, goes initially. I'd like to consistently say, close to 10 million as much as I can in terms of yearly volume. I also see it as not just volume, but the number of transactions that you do. Obviously, it depends how you look at it. If you have lower transactions but higher volume, that's kind of great. That means you're working with higher, but when my business is really thriving, when I get to meet the most people that I can, I actually, I wouldn't say I prefer this, but like a positive of working at lower price points, which you generally do when you're a younger realtor, you get to make more connections with more people, which is great. I shouldn't say it's more scalable, because obviously the people who are buying the more expensive house could just refer you to their friend too. But it's I guess just the way that I look at it is I'm trying to meet and have a positive experience provided to as many people as I can, and try to follow up with them just in a genuine sense. Some of my dips in my business that are hurting me is lack of systems in terms of follow-up. Right now, the way my brain works, I have a high capacity to follow up and remember things, but there comes a point where no one can do that if your business grows the way you want it to. It's like right now, I'll drive by a certain neighborhood and I always, am texting someone saying, hey, I'm in your neck of the woods. How's it going? Or, over time, I'm going to have too many sales to be able to remember that. You know what I mean? And that connection, that's where I say, make sure that your systems are actually long-standing in terms of how they work, because if I'm doing this short-term sort of just remember it thing, that's not going to be good long-term. And that's a fault in my business for sure right now. I need to have reinforced systems.
What do you think I'll leave this as your last question, and then we'll open it up for questions for the audience. But what would you say that your next step plan needs to be in order to put those systems in place?
It's really tough because, as all realtors know, we have so many people who are always trying to tell us to use their systems and use their things, and just automate that. Well, when your business strives off of not automating things and making things really personal, it's hard to say, I'll just use this automated system that, doesn't sound like me, doesn't look like me. You'll get emails where people are like, is this you, dude? To friends of mine. And it's like, so it's tough because you have to automate, but my automation needs to be closely aligned with how I just normally talk and joke and think. And because that's how I got their business. We'd say this in ministry, we would say how you win them is how you keep them. And that term would be used in terms of if you have an event at church, and all you would do was just events and you never really talked about, faith-based things or stuff like that. You'd create a bunch of people who would come, but they're only coming because you put on fun events. And the moment you start, changing the conversation, they're probably going to leave. So hopefully that analogy makes sense. The analogy over here is the way that I win clients, I have to make sure that I'm consistent in treating them that way and in being in front of them in that way. And if I automate myself out of my own personality, I'm fearful that I will lose repeat referral clients, which is where the consistency and the veterans in our business are made, is pretty much, in my opinion, by the people who are getting, so I have Follow Up Boss as a CRM, and I need to just be more intentional with that. To be quite honest, I don't, I don't see the holes in my business as clearly as I need to because things have been going so well for me. But I know that needs to be, it needs to be looked at. This doesn't last forever. And I'm starting to see that as a huge correction in my year. So I need to just refine my systems, meet with someone smarter than me. My whole advice to anything always is just meet with someone smarter than you and just do whatever they're doing. It is on many ways a copy and paste business. You can't copy and paste personality in relationships and things like that, of course, but a lot of systems and things you can copy and paste.
For sure, man. Well, I appreciate you doing this. I'm going to open it up for questions for the audience. So I'll mute myself. Feel free to ask Dan anything, and I think we can let it run for as long as we want if we have a ton of questions. If not, then we'll wrap it up. So leave it open for questions. All right. Well, may not have any, so you might have answered everybody's questions.
Okay. Either that or they're like, yeah, this just needs to be over. I'm like, I get it. Yeah, I understand.
No, I do appreciate you coming on, Dan. This has been great and a lot of good info, and I think a lot of great insight for other agents in our market. So I'll make sure that this gets spread out to people. Thank you all for joining in. Dan, thank you again. And looking forward to the next one. So stay tuned for our next guest as well. So Dan, have a great day. Thank you again, everybody.
Yep. Thanks, Jared.
Yep. Bye.
Thanks, guys. That was awesome.